Welcome to Batshit, a frank and funny look at living with mental illness.
While we'll touch on several mental illnesses, Batshit is focused on the bipolar disorder. I'm your host, Adam.
And I'm your other host, Brad.
And we're both bipolar, so sit back so we figure out exactly how batshit we really are.
Spoiler alert, pretty damn batshit.
Yay! Today I am super excited because we have an amazing guest. Her name is Rebecca Stevens. Hi, Rebecca!
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited to have you. Yeah. So I know Rebecca as the amazing and foul-mouthed improviser who used to frequent the stages at I.O. West, but she is so much more than that. Rebecca, would you like to talk to people about what you do for a gig now?
So I am now an associate marriage and family therapist, which means I'm still getting my hours to be licensed. So I'm about halfway there right now. And I work right now at a place called Our Life After Birth, and it's mostly prenatal and postnatal women and couples, but I also am working with actors and women in their 20s and men in their 30s, like everybody, because I need to get my hours, and I don't know what exactly my my focus is on. I love working with prenatal and postnatal women and couples, but I also know what it's like to be a 24-year-old struggling actor and get rejected all the time, because that was me just a couple years ago.
Well, I mean, it's awesome that you come on, because what you've just done unknowingly is giving us all sorts of actual credit. All of a sudden now we're official. We've had a doctor on the show, so now, our status has been raised amongst podcasts. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. And I do want to say something to you guys. I want to thank you, because when I started listening, it really helped me understand what bipolar feels like and how it manifests in my clients. And that helps me as a therapist just to be more empathetic and to have a better understanding of how difficult it is to have the highs and the lows.
Sure.
It's something that you can't learn in a textbook or at a lecture. So I appreciate you guys for being so honest. And for sharing and being so open about it. I also have a brother who's bipolar, and for years didn't understand why he was the way he was. But listening to you guys talk about it and share has just been huge for me. So thank you so much for doing this podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That means a lot. Again, we've been very surprised by the response to the podcast. The fact that this was really just a version of therapy for Brad and myself, and to have so many people respond so positively, it's just been fantastic.
And it's interesting, like you said, to get into kind of the weeds on it too, because the diagnostic criteria, you look at say how the DSM-5 lays out what constitutes bipolar, and it's a very narrow definition of symptoms, whereas us and so many people who've written us, so many other people we've talked to who are bipolar, the symptoms are wide and varied. Yes, there's that core group of symptoms that gets you diagnosed, but there's so much else going on, and it's been, I don't want to say fun. Is fun the right word?
Yeah, sure. Fun. Why
Yeah,
not?
it's been fun to talk about that.
Well, and it's more than just the DSM-5, sure, the symptoms, but I'm so much more into the feelings, what is the trigger, what happens when you have your high or low, what are you feeling, and can you even say what you're feeling, or do we live in the I don't know? And I don't know. I just appreciate you guys for doing this, because it's helped me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, because when you're talking with your various clients, and I'm sure you've dealt with a wide variety of mental health issues, especially with the coming just off the pandemic. Can you talk to us about, when you first meet someone who may have a mental illness or an issue that they want to talk with you about, how does that process go? Obviously we call up our doctors and we're like, hey, we want to meet and talk. But I know every therapist has their own basic approach to a different approach to approaching a client. So can you talk about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, I usually will have a phone call with a client. It's free 15 to 20 minutes just to see if we're a good fit and to see if I can be a source of help, because sometimes it's not me and I need to refer them out to someone if they need a higher level of care, or if they need a group, or if they need couples therapy, which I also do, but it just depends on the client and what they're looking for. And then when we have a session, it just comes down to why now? happened that you sought out therapy now? And so there's usually like, anxiety or depression or social anxiety or relational issues. And so then we talk about that. And then we talk about like, my favorite thing to do is towards the end of, after like getting to know them a little bit and talking about their family and their support system, is asking them like, if you were to wake up tomorrow and all of your worries, your stress, everything was gone, the anxiety, the depression, the relationship problems were gone, what would that look like? And to have them just sit with that and be like, what is my life without this? What is my life without anxiety or depression or alcoholism or an eating disorder? What does that look like? And then what does it feel like? And so that sort of helps me guide them to this is a part of you. That healed part of you lives in you. We just need to find that part that can make it happen. Because if they're like, yes, I can kind of feel, maybe I can feel the sun better. Maybe I could like taste something better. Maybe I can find joy in this. I'm like, there's that part that's in you. So let's find that part and give it a voice.
Yeah. Cultivate the good. Cultivate the good, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
that's an interesting way to think about it, that it's already in you.
Yeah. I like to think of my clients as there's parts of them. Like there's a part of them that's anxious, a part of them depressed, or a part of them that's whatever. But then there's also that other part that like, there is that voice that has that confidence and that wants to be heard. We just have to find it. And it's not only like, what is it, what it would be like tomorrow when you woke up, but it's also like, well, what happened in your past that made that voice be quiet or didn't let that voice talk? Like what went on? So I explore like the family history, because a lot of relationships we had when we were little, we just create those relationships again when we get older. Like we marry our dads, we marry our moms, like our best friend is our sister, quote unquote. Like we find those personalities again because it's what we're used to. So we explore that, and we explore what's healthy and what's not healthy. And we bring awareness to it too. Like there's no part of my clients that's bad or wrong. Like there's a part of them that's anxious and depressed. Okay, let's live in that and like see how we can cope with this and what we need to just heal it a little bit. But we're by no means ignoring it or repressing it. We're aware of it and we bring it up.
Yeah, you gotta pull it out into the sun, right? Like if you're not talking about it, then you're not dealing with it. And if you're not dealing with it, you're just gonna get sicker, for lack of a better term. And that's an awesome approach of like finding that piece of you that still works, is still good, the piece of you that is within you already, and then diving back to find out like how you lost it or where it went sideways. That's awesome. I love that. I love that idea.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's a lot of shadow work. Like you said, like we talk about the shadow part of us that we've sort of ignored, it's our subconscious and it shows, but it comes up all the time and we are just not aware of it, but we can look into our dreams, we can look into what our body is feeling. Like our body is telling us things. And that shadow part that we think is the worst part of us that we can't talk about is what we're going to fucking talk about. And it's okay. It's okay. Let's talk about it.
Right.
That shadow and give it a voice too and say, hi, hello, shadow. What I think is the worst part of me. Like, I love that in my clients because it's not the worst part of them. There's no worst part of them.
Yeah, the horribly embarrassing things I've told my therapist. Oh man, if there was a fly on the wall.
It's okay. We all get together and talk about it.
I knew it.
I would imagine. You just can't use names, right?
No, we don't. We don't talk about it at all.
Now, but that's an interesting question. So I've heard therapists often have therapists, right? To like, is that something that you've already started doing and working with someone, and has that helped you help your clients?
Yes, I've had a handful of therapists, and I've found that like some of them I don't like. It's not a good fit, but I actually learn what they did didn't work for me, and so like I pay attention to it. Like they're not a bad therapist; it just wasn't a good fit, and so I kind of pay attention to like, oh, this is what I didn't like about them. Am I doing that with my clients? And like I kind of explore, if I'm doing the same things, and then also like I've terminated with therapists before. And it's hard to do. And I realize clients have to terminate with me sometimes too. And you just don't take it personally. It's just kind of like, it's just not a good fit.
Right.
But it is hard being a therapist, going to a therapist, because we all learned the basic skill set. So I'm like, you want me to reframe right now, don't you?
I know what you're doing, you asshole.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I know your tricks.
Oh, you're actively listening to me right now, you bitch.
So one of the reasons also I wanted to have you on, Rebecca, besides being an awesome human being, is you're having such a wide berth of experience from everything from prenatal, postnatal, relationship counseling. Talk to me about, or talk to us about how your approaches might vary depending on what the issue is that brought your client to you. Do you find you have like a standard set approach? Or because we have a number of listeners who have all voiced, like, whether they're bipolar or ADHD or have anxiety, you know, a lot of them are trying to seek therapy, which isn't always easy with our healthcare system, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you. So I think having you talk about these approaches, right, and the variety of them can really help them feel comfortable and be more aware of what the process is going to be like when they start these conversations. So could you give me, do you have a variety of approaches depending on who you're seeing and what it's for?
Yeah, and when I meet with a client, I tell them right away that this is their time. Like, I want to build a relationship with them, but this is their time to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And if they don't know what to talk about, then I have so many questions. I'm so curious about them. I want to know, like I said before, like what brought them in. I want to know about their support system. I want to know if they, especially women that have just given birth, like, or that are pregnant, like the anxiety and depression. Like, let's talk about that, because I have a handful of clients that after they have given birth, they are all of a sudden depressed, or they all of a sudden have rage and they have anger and they don't know where this is coming from. And they think that this anger and rage is bad. And I'm like, no, it's, it's usually like an unmet need. Or like I had a breakthrough the other day with a client who was like, I just yelled at my kid and I couldn't stop it. And I was like, okay, but like, what else was going on? And she was like, well, my kid needed something from me. And I was like, okay. And what else? She's like, well, the TV was on and I had to send an email and the oven was going off. And I was like, oh, so it wasn't anger. You were just overstimulated. Like there was too much swirling around. And it got to a point where you just had to like scream. And thing is, honestly, guys, I scream at my kids too sometimes. They are assholes and I love them. I scream at them. But then what I do is I say, Mommy's sorry. Like I repair it as soon as I can. But now I forgot what your really question was. What was your original question? I'm a great therapist.
I'm glad you said that, because I scream at my kids a lot. But I'm always cognizant to apologize to them and to let them know what's going on. And I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like our parents' generation, the idea of treating a child with that level of respect was just completely foreign. I don't remember an adult ever apologizing to me for anything.
Right. No, never. They're always right. No matter what they did, they were in the right. Which then caused you to question your own sanity sometimes, to be like, well, I mean, I disagree that, you hitting me with your car was the right thing to do. I don't understand why I'm in the wrong.
I mean, that was a lesson you needed to learn.
I'm not saying I didn't learn from it. I definitely learned. I'm a better person now.
After getting hit by that
Getting hit by a car.
You really went to the extreme there. I was thinking like spoon, belt, hand.
No, car. It's like,
Yeah.
Right,
Adam, go stand at the end of the driveway. You need to
Close your
learn your
eyes.
lesson.
Look, we only had 3 spoons growing up. I'm not going to waste a spoon on you, asshole. No. Speaking of, like, as a youth, right? Like, growing into, your career as an actress, and now your career as a therapist, what made you take that shift? You know what I mean? Like, you went from being an actress, and a good actress, by the by, and decided that you wanted to start exploring this other career path. So what led you to therapy?
I believe I was always interested in what people thought and what made them like tick and what was going on in their heads. When I was in college, I had an eating disorder. So I went to therapy for the first time and it saved me. And like, I was like, oh, that's great. therapy's good. Okay. And then it got to a point where being in LA, IO West had closed down. And I was bartending at places and I was like, here I am talking to people and I'm so curious about them. Like I love getting to know people and, you know, we're talking and I maybe give some advice, but not really, but like, listen, and then I get a $1 tip and I'm like, all right, like, can I make some more money? And then I found a fantastic school in Santa Barbara that was depth psychology focused. So it was a lot of Carl Jung and Freud and dreams and archetypes and like basically like, why are we what we are, you know, like, and we're all in this together. And I just loved how like deep it was. And then the pandemic happened and then it all went to Zoom. And I was pregnant at the time with my first baby. But like I continued with the classes and it was just every class was so interesting to me. Like I was, except for like statistics, because math is stupid.
Why would you have to take math?
It was like clinical work. Like if we ever became like clinical, like research therapists.
Oh, right.
You have to do math?
There's numbers.
I
don't know. But I mean, I just loved it. And I loved like talking about like, you know, the unconscious collective and, you know, the emotional inheritance, how like generations of trauma are in our bodies and like they show up in our dreams and like, and it affects how we are now. And due to like the depression, your mom might be some way and that made you some way too. Like maybe you're weird with food and you hoard it. Like no one needs mayonnaise packets from the airport, but maybe you take them.
only name brand.
Oh, that makes me think of that little baggie I have of condiment package in the door of the fridge that I've never once used.
Oh yeah, well we all save those. You never know when you're gonna need soy sauce. That's important.
Arby's sauce.
You can buy that in a big bottle at Ralph's now. Did you know that?
What?
Really?
Yeah, like $4.99. You guys.
I've been doing that with Chick-fil-A sauce.
Yes, Mandy did the same thing. She's all about that Chick-fil-A sauce in the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the real question, I guess, then is I should be tipping my therapist more than $1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no, don't tip your therapist. I'm pretty sure
That would be pretty awkward, wouldn't it?
Tip your therapist. All right.
Like just at the end of the session, just pull out some bills.
I mean, it's cool that you talk about being a bartender because it's, like you said, it's its own form of therapy talking to a bartender, right? Your inhibitions are lowered because, you know, you've had a couple. And, you know, if you're drinking like that, oftentimes there's something you need or want to talk about, and you need that inhibition to be lowered. And the perfect person to talk to about that is the person giving you that fuel. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can only imagine the type of shit show stories you must have heard behind the bar. Especially working at an improv theater where everyone is super broken.
Yeah, well, and especially doing improv, like that helped me be a better therapist because you have to listen in your scene and you have to support your partner and you have to like just be in it the whole time. And if you have an idea, like maybe sometimes when I'm with a client, I have a question, I'm like, oh, I should ask them this, but then they'll go someplace else. And I'm like, okay, forget that idea. We're going here. I'll try to remember it later and bring it back to, you know, complete the Herald at the end of our 50 minutes.
Do you do a lot of organic openings with your clients? Just
very much so.
A lot of noises and dance routines.
You're like, all right, our session this time, you're going to put your hands behind your back. I'm going to slip my arms through you.
We do a lot of group games where I'm like, everyone get in here.
That's fun. Yeah. Oh, man.
Schizophrenics on that side. Bipolar on that side. Go.
We got to come up with a new cereal. Go.
Christ.
So when you're working with couples, do you have any experience? Obviously, you can't talk about specific cases, but working with couples where one of the couple is mentally ill and that's causing a strain on the relationship?
Well, first and foremost, I love working with couples because it's such a gorgeous process, and I applaud every couple, and every couple should go to therapy because you should even go to therapy when things are going well. You know, like it's such a great thing for you to just be there with your partner and have a third person there to support you guys and cheer you on, but also call you out for your shit.
Right.
And I have had clients where I noticed that there's like a personality disorder or, you know, a disease in one of them. And there's kind of usually something else in the other one that's like feeding into it, like a narcissist and a borderline. Or, you know, I've had like some bipolar and depression, like just straight on depression. And I also, with my couple clients, offer, after we've met a couple times as couples, I'll meet with them individually just to see where they're at and how they're going. And I recommend them getting individual therapy too, if they need it. But I've yet to, knock on wood, I've yet to have a couple that I'm like, I don't know what to do. If anything, I'm like, this is a great challenge. Like I'm here for this, because I also explore, like, if it's not working out, then do we separate? Like, I'm there for the separation too. Like that happens. You know, for as much as I'm like, oh, I'm here for you guys, I'm not gonna be like, everything's okay, guys. It's fine. Mommy and daddy, don't break up.
So sometimes you just have to be like, look, guys, have you thought about divorce?
I will never say it, but if they say it, then I'll be like, ooh, 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 ooh.
Thinking of a word, 2 syllables. Do you find that the couples counseling that you've been doing, has it been not one-sided, but was it initiated by one partner, or has it been that like both partners decide as a unit to come in, or do you get a lot of that, you know, that trope of like the wife dragging her husband to therapy?
I haven't had any dragging, but it usually is the wife that will make the first like email to me or reach out to me. And then when we do the phone consultation, I like both of them to be on the phone so that so they both have a voice, because that's my other thing is I don't take sides, and I let them know that if you feel like I'm taking sides, then call me out. Like, let me know if you feel that, and let's explore that, and I'll see, you know, if maybe subconsciously I was, or what's going on where you feel that, because I want each of them, I treat them, the relationship is the client, but they each have a voice in it. I want to make sure that they each are heard and listened to and validated. There's a lot of like just validation that just goes out the window, you know, and there's a lot of like taking advantage and not being grateful. And there's a lot of resentment in couples that sort of builds and you don't talk about it. So I bring that up to be like, let's explore what you absolutely do not like about your partner. And let's explore what you do like about your partner. Like I put it all out there because they're already thinking these things. So I'm just asking the questions so that we can get to a place that's honest. I'm all about getting to an honest place so that we can feel like, what is the unmet need? Like what is this relationship missing, and how do we get that?
Do you find with that, Adam had mentioned the trope of like dragging the husband in, and you said that usually it's the wives that contact you first, whether it's couples or individuals. Do you find that most of your clients are female or female driven?
Yes.
Like with the couples?
The majority of my clients are female. And even in my internship, I remember that, unpaid, by the way, when I was in grad school, California.
You didn't need money at that point in time, living in Southern California. Who needs money?
I don't need money. It comes out of the sky. I feel like the first male client I had, we did an intake session, and then he like never came back, and I was like, oh, and that was like my first rejection as a therapist, and I was like, oh man. And then I had a couple other ones that like just didn't come back, and I was like, all right. But then in my head, I realized that like, yeah, it could be me, or I could be reminding them of an ex-girlfriend or their mom, or they just weren't comfortable talking to me. And that's fine. You know, I took it very personally until I realized like what I want from all my clients is them to get the best care. And if they don't feel it from me, then I hope they found it someplace else, you know? And that's what matters. It's not me getting my hours so I can graduate. It's them getting the help that they need at this time.
Now, you said that, you know, if you don't click with a client, right, and they tend to seek help somewhere else, do you have people straight up say, hey, look, I don't really think we're jiving. Is there someone else you recommend me talking to? Or is that something you usually instigate?
I haven't really had that yet, so much as like clients being like, I don't want to do therapy at this time. And I'm like, okay. Because I do have, well, you know what, I did have another woman that she was like, I think I need a lower price. And so I sent her to a place that wasn't as expensive. So like that is something that I understand, because we don't take insurance, but we do write super bills and like there's ways to get reimbursed for it, but people don't want to pay a shit ton of money, even though first of all, it should be cheaper everywhere, and insurance should cover all therapy. But I do, again, it comes down to like, I don't want them stressing over having to pay for this session if I know that they can get help someplace else at a cheaper price. It's easier for them.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, I imagine, counterintuitive if they're stressed out when they come in about the session.
But, I mean, how can you not be, though? Yeah. Especially when you, like you said, like your place, for instance, doesn't take insurance, which sucks for some people because the only way they can afford it is with insurance helping out. Mm-hmm. And I recently had to go back to the California marketplace because I got laid off and, find a new insurance, which is no longer covering any of my therapy. So it's like now I got to dive back into that wormhole of trying to find an insurance company that will cover my therapy because my doctor is great. He's like scaling me right now, which is fantastic and thankful for that. But he says like, I'll try and work with any health insurance company, but some just don't pay until you hit your deductible. Which just sucks.
Yeah. The entire system's broken.
Agreed.
We talk a lot about how, in our opinion, mental health should be treated like physical health, and that you should the idea of having a checkup every year. Everybody goes in. Well, most people.
Most people go in.
I haven't been in a while, but
you should really get that bump looked at. Yeah, it's not
really.
It's starting to pus.
It's funny you say that because I currently have a sty.
Oh.
Yeah, the idea of going in once a year and just getting a checkup, like how we doing, how you feeling, and we don't treat mental health with the same seriousness, and you end up. I mean, both Adam and I were in our 40s when we got diagnosed. How much earlier could that have been caught?
Right. Do you foresee? Okay, in your professional opinion, talking with children about mental health, and maybe how they're being affected by their parents, and do you see that being like children going to therapy? Do you see that as productive? Is it like you pulling a trigger on that too early? Like, what are your thoughts there?
First of all, I always joke that my 2 boys are going to need so much therapy because I make them do crazy things. And I'm like, oh, you're going to need so much therapy. But at the end of the day, I hope they do go to therapy. Like, I hope they go to therapy and just have a place where they could talk to someone that cares about them and will support them more than me. Because, I mean, I know I'm great, but, they need someone that's not me and, like, non-judgmental that'll be there for them. So as much as I make that joke, I'm like, I hope everybody goes to therapy. I hope every kid goes to therapy. And pulling the trigger on a child going to therapy, there's no right time or wrong time. I think I say earlier the better. If a parent thinks that something's off with their child and therapy could help, do it, And I come from the Midwest where, if you went to counseling, there was something wrong with you, but like, then we have so many kids that are undiagnosed ADHD, and that are just like struggling, or, they've been molested, or they have this trauma, or they've been abused. And it's like, if you think your child is suffering at all, talk to them about it. Like, hey, do you want to go talk to this nice lady or this nice man? Because depending on their age, they mostly are going to play. Like, they're going to play with dolls, or they're going to do art, and they're going to talk to a nice person. And that person is going to be trained to pick out, like, if something needs to be explored more. And that doesn't mean something's wrong. Like, just, do we need to explore this more? And, like, start to heal it now so that it doesn't become a bigger issue when they get older.
Yeah. You mentioned, the trauma they might have endured at some point in time. Do you think, with your experience, you've seen parents, you've seen some of their children as well. Do you see a similar diseases passed down from like parents to children? Like, can you sit there and be like, oh, for instance, I'm dealing with this client. I'm wondering if their mother or father, who then affected them, might have brought this illness along genetically. Does that make sense? Like, I'm kind of looking for like is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it both? I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
I definitely think it's both. I mean, from my own experience, so I had an eating disorder, and I know that like a handful of my cousins had it, but my mom and dad didn't, but like I feel like it's sort of genetically there. And I definitely think things like anxiety and depression can be passed down because not only is it kind of in them, but also they see their parents acting anxious or depressed, and it kind of like, and then I think something in them triggers it. So like I was a very healthy woman child growing up till I got to college.
Is that how your mom introduced you? This is my woman child, Rebecca.
I don't know what to call myself. Preteen? Like, I don't know. Like food was like not a big deal for me. And then I got to college and I was 2,000 miles away from home and I was very homesick and I couldn't control anything, but the thing I could control was food. So it was the fact that I think it was genetically, there was a trigger waiting to happen. And the fact that that trigger happened that made me get an eating disorder, which I think is the same for my, not my clients, but clients in general and children, where it can be in them. And it's just that thing of like, okay, if you know this about yourself, that you're a mother that's anxious, do you want to process this or do you pass it on to your child? Because it probably is already in their genetic makeup and it's not your fault. It came from, generations ago. But at what point do you put your foot down and are the one that's like, I'm going to do the hard work and I'm going to process this and I'm going to work through it so that I don't pass it on to my child.
Right. And if you start treating yourself, taking care of yourself, what's going to end up happening is you're going to help your child when your child comes to that point. If your child ever does struggle, if you've already done the work, suddenly you're equipped to help them, face the same type of trauma.
Thanks for listening. Help us continue the conversation. Leave us a comment with your thoughts, experiences, or questions about mental health. Every opinion and viewpoint is valid. Just don't be a dick.
Rebecca, we want to go back to talking about, again, the trope of the woman dragging the man to therapy. But then you did say that more often than not, you have more female clients than male clients. Why do you think that is?
Sorry.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Oh, this is
I
gonna be
softball
loaded.
lobbed that to you, Beck.
Yeah.
Come on, what you got?
Yeah, I can't. I have to say ethical. I'm not gonna.
No. Go on.
No, you don't. Not on this podcast.
I was gonna be like, because all the men want to fuck me.
That's why they didn't come back. They're like, I
That's
can't.
not true. Also, it's all on Zoom.
That's an interesting.
Yeah, but since it's all on Zoom, you can't see what they're doing.
That's true. That's an interesting thing.
You're like, all right, men, you have to keep your hands up the entire time.
No, I don't know why, because I have an equal amount of like female friends and male friends in my life. So I just think that so back in like Freud, it was all male therapists and it was mostly females that went in because they were all hysterical because like their vaginas were making them crazy. They're moving around and bullshit. And I think that through time, women have just been like, no, we can do this too. And we know women better. So I think that there's always been more females in therapy. And I think that goes down to the fact that like, well, you guys know you're not allowed to talk about your feelings.
Yeah,
I suppose that's true. I was kind of hoping there'd be like more of a medical reason, but I guess not. It's just men don't like to talk about their feelings.
Yeah, I mean, even my grad school was mostly females that were getting their master's degree.
Really? So the occupation is starting to become dominated by women. The clientele is majority women. So we already know women are more intelligent than men. So now they're going to be healthier than men. Like, guys, get your shit together and start going to therapy because...
This is going to be a segment on Tucker Carlson in like 3 weeks. Like, women are now dominating the world because men won't. Actually, that would be great if Tucker Carlson was like, go seek mental health.
But, at someday, us women might have rights to our bodies.
What?
That'll never
I don't know.
Is that wild? Is that wild?
It's a little nuts.
What, in your opinion, would help break the stigma that men have against seeking help for their mental health?
Oh, I mean, that's
a loaded question.
I mean, no, it's years of masculinity where men don't feel safe to have be sensitive or have feelings, or they think they have to deal with it, you know? And I think that's, you know, at least our men now that are 20s, 30s, and 40s, maybe not so much 20s, but 30s, 40s, 50s, it's like they grew up where they weren't allowed to cry. They weren't allowed to have feelings, you know? They have to buck up, you know, have a beer. And like, you guys know when you go out with your guy friends, you get into deep conversations. I mean, I know you two do because you're weird.
Yeah.
We
hold hands.
Yeah. But like, do you have deep conversations? And not really, because it's almost like it's not a safe place because you're going to be called names. And then those names, you're called those names when you're younger. So then you feel like it's not safe for you. So it's a whole like flip of society to make it, to normalize it. You know, it's me telling my parents in the Midwest that it's called therapy and they should go too. You know, it's that like idea of like, and I think that mainstream media has done a better job of like showing mental illness. And then also some shows are doing a good job of showing therapists and how it is a good thing. But then you have shows like, God, what was it? Oh God, Gypsy.
The musical Gypsy?
No. Or with the one where the therapist steals all the money, the Steve Carell and Will Ferrell.
Oh yeah, I know.
What is
I can't think of the name of
Paul
it.
Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell.
Yes, Steve Carell.
Shrinking? Was it called Shrinking? Maybe.
No. Shrinking's really good.
Shrinking's a different one. I forget the name of that one, but that one is an example of like, yeah, why would anyone want to go to a therapist? Like, because they'll steal your money or whatever. But I also think it's that like you have to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable and show all parts of you in order to heal. And the thing is, and I hope that men and women know this, your therapist isn't going to use it against you. Like, we sit in the space with you and we support you as you figure this out to help you heal. And only if we think you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else do we ever call the cops, you know?
Right.
So it's like, it's not a confessional, you know? It's not oh, you're going to be judged. And if you feel judged by your therapist, get another one, because it should be a safe place for you to talk. And I don't think the majority of the men know that. Like, I don't think they know that that exists, that they could just talk about whatever they wanted to. And someone is just going to support them and sit with them in that. Yeah.
Because, I mean, even, you know, again, we're weird and we talk about this stuff a lot more than I think a lot of guys. But even in my experience, when you try to talk to your friends, men will judge you and just be like, you know, man the fuck up.
Right. Or they'll deflect with humor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a very common thing as well.
And we've talked a lot about how, like, female friends are just as equally judgy. Like, as much as they're like, hey, we want men to be sensitive and open up, a lot of times when you do, they have that same kind of notion of toxic masculinity. And it's like, whoa, that's too much. Yeah. You know, I need you to be strong.
Yeah. When I found out that my husband was in therapy when we were dating, I was like, and I wasn't even a therapist yet, but I was like, that is the hottest thing I've ever heard. And even today, I was at Trader Joe's and my checker, they're always like, how's your day going? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk to you, but I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, it's good. Like the writer's strike, the actor's strike, like I support it. I took my son there and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, well, I was telling my therapist today. And I was like, oh, what? Oh.
You know what I heard? I heard that the Trader Joe's employees are told to flirt with you. I was told that in their training, they were told to like purposefully flirt with you.
You just broke her heart.
Listen here, Trader Joe's, you just lost a customer for life.
No, you didn't.
They check my ID every time, and I think it's because they think I'm 19.
Right.
They lost me as a customer because of their horrible parking lots and the fact that for some reason all the aisles are at an angle and create traffic jams with buggies.
And ever since the pandemic, they've changed some of their products. Like, man used to love these like pretzel thins or like dark chocolate pretzel thins that don't exist there anymore, and it's pissing her off.
No, they used to have an appetizer that was like shrimp toast, which sounds gross, but it was delicious. They don't have it anymore. Listen here, Trader Joe's. You have two customers.
Trader Joe's, we're also looking for sponsorship, so if you want.
Now, with your background in comedy, do you find...
Does that fuck you up in sessions? Like, do you have to keep from making jokes?
Are you fucked up, and that's why you... No. I'm going to preface this question with a little story. So, as listeners to the show are aware, my mother died of complications with my childbirth, and for most of my life, I felt like I killed her. And finally, getting into therapy, I dealt with that. But one of the things that made me deal with it was actually talking to my friend Charlie. I called him up after I got diagnosed bipolar, and I was talking to him about that, and I was like, yeah, and I always felt like I killed my mother. And he goes, fuck that. She's a grown woman. If she couldn't defend herself against a baby, then she deserved to die. And I just lost my shit. And for some reason, though, that like broke a wall that had always been there. Just being able to just like laugh my ass off horribly inappropriately. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
But I wonder, like with your background in comedy, do you find that's useful in therapy with some clients?
Mm-hmm. The piece that I wrote to when I applied for grad school was about how comedy can heal, and how like veterans are using comedy to heal, and how I see it as a healing place. And it definitely comes up in my sessions because that's a part of me as a human being. Like, I have that comedy in me, and it's not me being like, this is my tight 50 minutes and I'm just gonna wow them. It's more like them helping to see the funny. Yeah, I feel like comedy is so close to tragedy. Obviously, they've got those little faces, those happy, sad faces that every actor knows on the SAG after building, maybe. Mm-hmm. But it is so close because there is something so healing about being able to laugh and to find the funny. And I try to do that with my clients, not my clients that are like severely like dealing with depression. I'm not like, let me tell you a joke, or what do you think is funny? But there are moments when like I'll be like, what you just said, like that's kind of funny, or I'll comment and it's kind of funny, just to like not to take us out of the moment or to cover it up, but just to like release a little bit, to let them know that like it's safe to laugh, it's safe to cry. Like they go hand in hand in healing, and there is so much healing in the comedy. I mean, like Brad, what you said, like just reframing it in such a way that like, yeah, your mother was a fucking adult woman, like her vagina couldn't take you, like, okay.
But it's I mean, just having someone to help you reframe it is great, right? Because we're too close to our trauma and our pain. And sometimes you need, a therapist, a friend, to be able to be like, go back, say what you just said again, only try and take a further step back. And, I used to have a friend that made terrible dating decisions, and I used to make her say what she's going to do out loud. Something like one instance was her saying, I was like, okay, Sarah, just say it again out loud. She's like, well, I'm going to go on a date with my bus driver who picks me up at 2 a.m., and complimented my hair. Yeah, no, I don't think that's a good idea. So I think you should dip.
Does her bus driver also work at Trader Joe's?
He probably does. That's probably his day gig. Some bitch.
Look, I have to have multiple jobs in this economy, guys.
No, but that's good. Like saying it out loud, literally saying out what you were thinking of doing is very helpful. To be like, all right, do you think that sounds good when you hear it? Does it sound good? And no, going out with your bus driver is probably not great.
Probably not a great life choice. Yeah, no, she didn't do it, by the way, audience. She didn't go out with her bus driver. So, victory.
Today, that bus driver, George Clooney.
Yeah, no, she fucked up. She fucked up. That'd be amazing. George Clooney driving a bus for a role. I can see that.
The reframing is interesting because that's one of the things I've found very helpful in therapy is you talk about these tragic things with your friends and they kind of like get down in the ditch with you. They get affected emotionally. They're feeling to some extent what you're feeling. And in a way that kind of that empathy is nice sometimes, but it can also kind of create a negative feedback loop.
Sure.
Whereas when you're talking to your therapist about it, at least for me, my experience has been you get it all out to the point where I don't know what to talk about in therapy anymore. Like I've talked all this stuff to death. And when it comes to when I have a therapy session, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about today. We start the session and she's like, well, what's been happening? And I'm like, I don't know what to talk to you about. I feel like I've talked about everything.
Do you run into that? Like people coming in, some of your regulars, and they just don't have much to say?
Yeah, sometimes when I have couples where things are going great and there's no like conflict or crisis, they're like, everything's good. And then I'm like, cool, let's talk about why everything's good. Like what about is good, and what are you doing to make it good? So there's always something to talk about. I've also had clients where I'm like, I'll ask them a question. They'll be like, I don't know. And I'm like, great, let's live in the I don't know. Like that's an answer. There's so much there, even though you don't have the words to say it. And so then I sit with them and maybe we like do some somatic work, or I'll ask some questions that'll make them get a little deeper to see if the I don't know is an emotion. Like, is the I don't know anger? Is there something that the I don't know is covering up? Because it's so easy to be like, I don't know.
Right.
There's always something. You're feeling something.
Yeah, your stock answers are just another way of deflecting.
Yeah. And I also, I have, what was I going to say? Yeah, I don't know. Oh my God. To myself.
It's so meta.
Damn, that
It's
was
so
meta.
meta.
That was meta as hell.
Oh, I remember it now. Brad, when you were talking about like when you're with your friends and like they go down that like sad, like you tell them something and they kind of sit with you and they empathize and like they'll just be like, yeah, that sucks. One thing that I tell my couples is that when you're with your friends and you tell a story of like, oh, my partner did this, can you believe that happened? You don't want a friend that's going to be like, I can't believe that happened. How could they do that? You want a friend that's going to be like, well, what did you do wrong?
Yeah.
You need friends to support your relationship, and they don't have a say in it, but they do. They are allowed to call you out. Be like, well, how did you fuck up at this?
But no, wait a minute. Like, because here's the thing. As a husband who has a wife who likes to get support when something goes wrong and basically wants me to listen because Becky's a bitch, right? Like that's a form of support, though, right? Like she does not appreciate when I'm like, well, babe, you know.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean as the partners. I meant when like you were out with your friends.
Oh, friends. Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh no, partners should shit upon the other partner's friends all day long.
Got it. Right. Fuck Becky.
That's the foundation of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, your friends as outsiders shouldn't shit on a relationship, because then that just feeds more of the negativity, and then you come home and then you're like, well, you are blah blah blah, and it's like, no, you want your friends to support your relationship. Like, yes, you want a place to rant and like say what you're feeling, but your friend should just listen and be like, yeah, okay, but like, what did you do wrong too? And like, oh, that sounds hard, but like, what did you do wrong? Instead of like taking a side and like ganging up against your partner when your partner's not there to defend themselves. That's what I was saying.
Sure, that makes more sense. Okay, cool. All right.
Because
I was gonna go to Mandy and be like, Becca told me that I could do this now, so that's what I'm gonna do.
No.
Cut to Adam at the ER getting stitches.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You're my emergency contact, Brad. So know that.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Oh no. Red flag.
Look, we're codependent podcast hosts. What do you want me to say?
All right, I will be your couples therapist. I'll do it.
That's what we should do. Is we should do a live couple counseling on here, Adam.
That's a great idea. I love that. Yeah, Brad, you're enabling Adam. Rebecca, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see the other side of the curtain, I guess.
Yeah, because all we can do is assume, right? Like, I guess this is how a therapist's mind wraps around this, but...
Yeah, and I'm not even licensed yet. So you guys just wait till I get licensed, and then it's going to be like...
And how much longer until you're licensed?
I have to get 3,000 hours, and I think I have 1,700. So that time to get to there.
You can take us on. You'll get that pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I need to see both of you guys daily. And so we're just going to do a weekend thing. It's going to be great.
Yeah. It's a retreat.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I'm going to go on a retreat.
Mental health retreat.
I like that. It does sound nice, doesn't it?
But you know what? I will not be buying our snacks at Trader Joe's.
Fuck you, Trader Joe's. Fuck you. No, this has been awesome. Rebecca, I hope we can have you back on again because I love talking with you. And again, it's a great perspective that neither Brad or I have. And I think it's super helpful for anyone listening to realize that therapy is a safe space. Therapy is a place that you go to get support. There's no judgment. It's just a place to talk about whatever you want to talk about, which will lead to healing. And that's so important. So important.
Yeah, and know that your therapist can take it. Like when I have multiple sessions throughout the day, it's a lot, but I can take it. Like I could sit and be present and be there because I have my own self-care,
Right.
I love Kohl's. I love the department store Kohl's. And self-care. And I have that, creative outlet. I have my family. So there's nothing that you're going to throw out at your therapist that they're like, oh, I don't know what to do with it. So know that we're not going to be judgmental. Know that we're curious about you and we want to hold you in the space and just be with you and help you find the parts of you that are ready to heal until all the parts are kind of ready to heal. And then you are better. And then you terminate and we never see you again. And that's the best thing ever because that's our goal is to not see you again.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
So it's just like my dating life.
Hi-oh. Hey. Hey, people listening know that you are loved, whether you're seeking therapy or not. This has been a form of our therapy. Hope you're finding your own therapy. But if you find someone like Rebecca to talk to, it's going to be super healing. So know that. Know that you're loved. Know that you're seen. Thank you so much for listening.